Someone planned this down to the second. The cameras, the internet, the dogs that barked and then had nothing to bark at. And 58 days later, not a single arrest. The Nancy Guthrie case is not a mystery anymore. It is a blueprint for how a calculated, technology-enabled abduction can happen in a quiet American neighborhood and leave investigators with almost nothing to go on. Today, that blueprint is coming into focus, and what it reveals is more unsettling than anything this case has produced yet. If you are new here, I am Febry, and this is the Febry Report. Subscribe right now because this case is moving fast and you cannot afford to miss a single update. Let's begin with the neighbor 2 houses down, because his story just became one of the most important pieces of this entire investigation. Jeff Lamie lives a few houses away from Nancy Guthrie's home in Tucson's Catalina foothills. He is not an investigator. He is not law enforcement. He is a neighbor who noticed something and, when investigators came knocking, put the pieces together. His dogs woke him up twice, once on January 11th, once in the early morning hours of February 1st, the night Nancy disappeared. Both of those dates are now under active FBI scrutiny. Both are dates investigators have publicly asked the community to focus on. And both times, Jeff Lamie went outside, looked around, heard nothing, saw nothing, and went back to bed. What he did not know then, what he only realized when he went back to check his own surveillance footage, was that 2 of his cameras were marked offline during both of those windows, not malfunctioning, not missing a recording. Simply offline. During both exact time frames, he told investigators he gave them everything he had, and now those 2 camera outages sit alongside something the FBI is actively probing that changes the entire character of this case. 3 separate neighbors independently told NBC News that FBI agents came to their doors and asked them a very specific question. Did you notice any disruptions to your internet service on the night Nancy disappeared? Agents told those homeowners that multiple people in the neighborhood had already reported connectivity glitches that night. A damaged utility box found around the corner from Nancy's home is under active examination, and an antenna-like device visible in the pocket of the masked suspect, captured on camera at Nancy's front door, has prompted serious questions about whether he was carrying signal jamming equipment. Think about what that means if confirmed. This person did not just show up with a gun. He may have shown up with technology specifically designed to blind a neighborhood, to cut wireless signals across a localized area, to make every Ring camera, every Nest device, every connected home security system within range go dark, simultaneously, silently, invisibly, while he walked through Nancy Guthrie's front gate and up to her door. Retired law enforcement analyst Lisa Miller noted that Wi-Fi jammers have been documented in organized theft and abduction operations across the country. She called the theory plausible while noting that disabling multiple residences simultaneously would require a more powerful device than a standard handheld jammer. Plausible. Active investigation. Not confirmed, but the dogs barked on January 11th and the cameras went offline on January 11th, and then both things happened again on February 1st, right before Nancy Guthrie vanished. That is not a coincidence investigators are dismissing. Now let's talk about what the suspect actually did, in sequence, because when you lay the timeline out in order, the level of preparation becomes impossible to ignore. January 11th, approximately 3 weeks before the abduction. Someone enters the Catalina foothills neighborhood, a neighbor's dogs wake up, multiple cameras go offline, the person is not captured on any surviving footage, they leave without incident. This was not the crime, this was the rehearsal. Late January, FBI begins asking neighbors to review their cameras from January 1st through February 2nd, with January 11th and January 24th as specific focus dates. The request covers a 2-mile radius around Nancy's home. The window is unusually wide, not because investigators do not know when the crime happened, but because they believe the suspect was in that neighborhood multiple times before he struck. January 31st, 9:48 p.m. Nancy Guthrie is returned to her home. The garage door closes at 9:50 p.m. She is 84 years old. She has a serious heart condition. She takes daily medication that she did not have with her when she left. She goes to bed. February 1st, 1:47 a.m. The Nest camera at Nancy's front door disconnects. The neighborhood internet begins experiencing disruptions. Jeff Lamie's dogs wake him for the second time in 3 weeks. February 1st, 2:12 a.m. A motion detection event is logged on the camera system, but the footage is marked not available. Something triggered it. Someone was there. February 1st, 2:28 a.m. Nancy's pacemaker disconnects from her phone. Bluetooth range is approximately 30 feet. She is being moved away from her device. She is past the front door. She is on the path. She is heading toward the driveway. The blood trail begins inside the front foyer. It continues over the threshold of the front door. It runs down the gravel path. It stops at the driveway. 58 days later, that driveway is still the last confirmed location of Nancy Guthrie. The body found in the Scottsdale Canal on Saturday morning has been identified, and it is not Nancy Guthrie. Her name was Passion Schertz. She was 28 years old. She was a mother of two. She was a member of the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community and had been reported missing since March 22nd, just 6 days before her body was found floating in a canal near Hayden and Indian Bend Roads in Scottsdale, approximately 117 miles from Tucson. Scottsdale police confirmed she had not been stabbed or shot and had no broken bones. Cause of death is pending the medical examiner's report. Investigators from both Scottsdale Police and Salt River Police are working jointly. There is no confirmed connection to Nancy Guthrie's case, but Passion Schertz deserves more than a paragraph. She was a young woman, a mother, a member of a community that has historically seen its missing persons cases receive a fraction of the investigative resources and media attention that cases like Nancy Guthrie's command. She was missing for 6 days. Her body was found in a canal. And outside of regional and indigenous community coverage, her story barely registered nationally. The Nancy Guthrie case has done something unintentional but important. It has held a mirror up to the American missing persons system and shown in uncomfortable clarity how unevenly that system responds depending on who is missing. Nancy Guthrie had 400 federal agents working her case within days. She had $1 million reward. She had her daughter on national television every morning. She had Google engineers and FBI analysts working together to recover deleted footage. Passion Schertz had 6 days. That is not an accusation directed at any individual investigator. It is an observation about a system, and about what this case at its largest scale is actually revealing about how America treats its missing. The financial architecture of this crime has not received the scrutiny it deserves, and what the FBI is now examining suggests the person or persons behind this understood cryptocurrency well enough to attempt a multi-million-dollar extraction. The initial ransom demand totaled approximately $4.7 million in Bitcoin. The delivery mechanism, sending notes to TMZ and 2 local Tucson television stations rather than directly to the family, was not careless. It was strategic. Media organizations have public contact forms. Anyone can send a message. The family's private contact information is not publicly available. By sending to media, the ransom author guaranteed the message would reach Savannah Guthrie while simultaneously making it impossible to trace through any conventional communications record. Bitcoin was chosen for a reason. Cryptocurrency transactions are technically traceable on the blockchain. Every transaction is recorded publicly. But once funds move through enough wallets, enough mixing services, enough peer-to-peer exchanges across multiple jurisdictions, the trail becomes extraordinarily difficult to follow in real time. The FBI's crypto forensics capabilities are strong, but they are not instantaneous, and a sophisticated actor who understands blockchain architecture can move funds fast enough to stay ahead of the analysis. The FBI's cryptocurrency investigation unit has been actively involved in this case since the early weeks. What they have found, if anything, has not been made public. But the sophistication of the financial demand, combined with the sophistication of the surveillance disruption, tells a consistent story about whoever planned this. This was not improvised. This was not a person who decided on a Tuesday to abduct an elderly woman and demand Bitcoin. This took planning, technical knowledge, and operational discipline. That profile does not match a casual opportunist. It matches someone who studied this, someone who chose this target deliberately, someone who believed they had covered every angle, and who came within one neighbor's dogs and one surviving camera frame of being completely invisible. There is a behavioral thread in this case that former FBI Special Agent Steve Moore identified this week, and it is worth examining carefully because it speaks to what investigators may know that the public does not. Savannah Guthrie's brother Cameron is a former military fighter pilot and intelligence professional. When he received the phone call describing the scene at his mother's home, blood on the front porch, cameras missing, back doors propped open, an 84-year-old woman gone without her phone or medication, his immediate instinctive conclusion was ransom kidnapping, not a medical emergency, not a burglary, not foul play of an unknown nature. ransom kidnapping, specifically tied to Savannah's wealth and public profile. Moore noted that Cameron's response is the product of training. Someone who has spent a career assessing threats, calculating vulnerabilities, and thinking like an adversary will instinctively apply that framework when confronted with an ambiguous threat scenario. The combination of factors Cameron heard described, the deliberate camera removal, the exit wound of blood leading to a driveway, the absence of anything taken except the person, assembled into a picture his brain was trained to read. What analysts are quietly noting is this: Cameron's immediate conviction about the motive suggests either exceptional instinct, exceptional training, or some prior context that made the conclusion feel obvious the moment he heard the details. That third possibility, prior context, is one investigators have never confirmed or denied publicly. Has the Guthrie family received threats before? Have there been prior approaches, prior attempts, prior communications that would make a ransom abduction feel less like a cold shock conclusion and more like a feared outcome finally materializing? Savannah has not been asked this question directly on camera. No interviewer has pressed it. It remains, as of today, unanswered. Here is a detail that the mainstream coverage of this case has consistently underweighted, and it matters because it speaks directly to the question of whether this was a planned kidnapping or a burglary gone wrong. The interior of Nancy Guthrie's home showed almost no signs of disturbance. Investigative journalist Ashley Banfield, who has maintained active law enforcement sources inside this investigation since day one, reported that a source close to the case described the interior this way. But for the blood pattern in the front foyer, it was as though Nancy had simply gotten up in the middle of the night and walked out of her house. No obvious signs of struggle, no ransacked rooms, no overturned furniture, nothing knocked over, nothing missing, nothing broken inside. That description is profoundly strange for a crime of this nature, and it splits expert opinion down the middle. On one side, veteran Pima County crime scene analyst Weaver Barkman, who spent 26 years inside the same department now leading this investigation. He looked at the doorbell camera footage of the suspect and said plainly that the suspect's clothing, behavior, and equipment pointed more towards someone planning a burglary than a kidnapping. Former FBI Special Agent Gregory Vecchi agreed, suggesting this may have started as a home invasion, with Nancy waking up and the suspect panicking. On the other side, former FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer reviewed the same footage and said the suspect walked straight toward the camera with his head down and no hesitation. He knew exactly where it was. That is not someone casing a random house. That is someone who had been to that specific property before, which January 11th now appears to confirm. A clean interior, a deliberate approach, a 3-week reconnaissance visit, a neighborhood-wide communications blackout. The burglary gone wrong theory requires you to believe that someone wearing a full face mask, carrying a backpack, armed, and possibly equipped with a signal jammer, broke into a house in a neighborhood he did not know well, happened to find an 84-year-old woman, panicked, took her, and then, in the following days, composed and delivered 2 sophisticated ransom notes with specific interior details about the home, a Bitcoin payment demand, and enough credible information to pass the FBI's initial authentication review. That sequence does not describe a panicking burglar. It describes a person who had a plan. There are moments in this case that belong to the investigation, and then there is this, which belongs only to a family. Savannah Guthrie said it on camera, in front of the country, without flinching even as she broke. "If it's because of me, Mommy, I'm so sorry." She has been carrying that sentence for 58 days. She has been waking up in the middle of the night. She said these exact words, imagining what her mother saw above her bed in the dark before she was taken, barefoot, in her pajamas, bleeding, 84 years old and terrified in a way that no child should ever have to picture their parent. Savannah Guthrie is not a fragile person. She has covered wars, disasters, and political upheaval. She has sat across from presidents and asked the questions no one else would. She has built a career on being composed under pressure. And she sat in front of Hoda Kotb and apologized to a woman who may not be able to hear her. Al Roker noted on air that Savannah's return to the Today Show on April 6th, the Monday after Easter, felt almost symbolic. Savannah is a woman of deep documented faith. She has written about it publicly, and what she said in that interview about faith was not performance. It was a person navigating the gap between hope and acceptance in real time, on camera with millions of Americans watching. She described feeling, early in the ordeal, a spiritual certainty that she knew where her mother was and who she was with, whether Nancy was still on this earth or somewhere beyond it. That is a daughter beginning to grieve. Not giving up, not surrendering, but beginning the process that the family's own statement described explicitly. They want to bring Nancy home so she can rest in her final place. They want to celebrate her life, but they cannot do that until she is found. They are not talking about a birthday party. They are talking about a burial. And they are saying it in language carefully chosen, language that tells you, if you are listening, where this family's private understanding of this situation actually lives. The institutional collapse around this investigation has continued this week, and it matters not just as a political story, but as a forensic one, because how the crime scene was handled in the first hours and days will determine whether any prosecution in this case ever succeeds. Former U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Richard Carmona, who commanded Pima County's SWAT team for years before becoming the nation's 17th Surgeon General, said it directly on News Nation. The crime scene was corrupted. Once it is corrupted, that is the end of it. You cannot reconstitute it. A pizza delivery driver walked across Nancy Guthrie's front lawn during the active investigation, up to her front door, while deputies watched and did nothing. The camera mount bracket, physically touched and wrenched by the suspect on camera, remained on the wall for approximately 2 to 3 weeks. The doormat at the front entrance was reportedly never taken into evidence. Glass fragments seen beneath the Nest camera mount shortly after the disappearance may not have been collected. Neighbors who live adjacent to Nancy's property told AOL.com that the chaos surrounding the home, journalists, independent investigators, curious members of the public, had in their view harmed the investigation from the earliest days. Sheriff Nanos, for his part, told a local station he has no regrets about his team's handling of the case. The Pima County Deputies Union has voted unanimously against him. The Board of Supervisors has invoked a 19th century territorial law requiring him to submit sworn reports after records revealed disciplinary issues at a prior job and discrepancies on his resume. A recall effort is underway, and the department arrested one of its own deputies, 22-year-old Travis Reynolds, on kidnapping charges in a completely separate, unrelated case during the same week Savannah gave her interview. None of this means the investigation cannot produce results. The DNA lab in Florida is still processing. The FBI's genetic genealogy capability is still available if a viable profile can be isolated. And 58 days is not forever. The Golden State Killer was identified after 40 years. But the institutional scaffolding around this investigation is fractured, and the family is still waiting. This is where everything stands as of Monday, March 30th, 2026, day 58. The body in the Scottsdale Canal has been identified as Passion Shirts, 28. No confirmed connection to Nancy Guthrie. Her family deserves answers too. Jeff Lamie's dogs woke him on January 11th and February 1st. His cameras were offline both times. He has told investigators everything. The FBI is actively examining whether a signal jammer or deliberate internet disruption blinded the Catalina Foothills neighborhood during the abduction. A damaged utility box near the home is under investigation. An antenna-like device in the suspect's pocket remains unexplained. DNA Labs International in Deerfield Beach, Florida, is processing an unknown male DNA sample recovered from inside Nancy's home using next-generation mixture deconvolution technology. No match has been publicly confirmed. The FBI is probing a sophisticated $4.7 million Bitcoin ransom demand sent through media organizations rather than directly to the family, a delivery mechanism specifically designed to prevent electronic tracing. Savannah Guthrie returns to the Today Show anchor chair on April 6th. She apologized to her mother on national television. She is not giving up. Neither are we. If you know anything about activity in the Catalina Foothills on the evening of January 11th or in the early hours of February 1st, call 1-800-CALL-FBI. The family's $1 million reward is still active. No detail is too small. This video brought you the full picture that no single outlet covered today. If it gave you something valuable, share it right now. Leave a like. It keeps this coverage in front of the people who need to see it. And if you are not yet part of the Febry Report community, subscribe now. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 58 days. The investigation is still active. The tip line is still open, and somewhere out there, someone is still deciding whether to make the call that breaks this case open. I am Febry. This is the Febry Report. Thank you for watching.